Always wait for your audience to get settled. The purpose of an introduction is to set the table for the speaker so that you know how to listen to this talk. Michael Hamman I've known for 15 years, I believe. And I know some things about his resume, that he was a music composer, actually. That he was a developer, software developer, that worked in extreme programming very early on in the 90s. That he was a software, or there was a team coach for a long time. And I know more recently that he is a thinking partner for executives. He's a very provocative coach. He helps leaders think in different ways. He led classes with me at the Agile Coaching Institute for several years. We have a really good time together. He has as brilliant of an intellect as anybody that I work with. It's a joy to work with him for me. And he's going to use a lot of big words up here, and some of them you won't know, and some of them I'll say, "What the hell are you saying, Hamman?" But his humanity is his greatest feature. And as I said yesterday, becoming a great leader is about becoming a great person. And Michael's heart shines out more than anything about him. So I hope you enjoy his, I can't even remember the name of your talk exactly, but it's basically the inside of the inside job of transformation.
Thank you. Let me just get this technology set up here. Give me a moment. I'm not like Swamiji. I need my technology. And let's just pray that it works. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for that introduction, Michael. I want to start out by, can you turn the volume down just a little bit? Thank you. I don't want to blast everybody out, because at some point I'm going to start yelling. So don't provoke me too much. I want to start out first by, I feel really deeply moved. This is my first time in India. I've been here for about 2 weeks now. And I am a lifelong spiritual practitioner. And the lineage of my spiritual teachers all trace back to your country. And I see evidence of the deep wisdom of that tradition in every interaction that I have and in every kind look that I experience. And I just want to express deep gratitude to you and the culture in which you celebrate and live so authentically. So I'm dedicating this talk with humility to you and to your country and to your history and to your culture. So thank you. So, about 40 years ago, a book came out called The Inner Game of Tennis. Who's heard of that book? Maybe even read it, right? So, a couple of you. It's an oldie but a goodie. And in this book, the author never said a single word about a tennis stroke. backstroke or whatever. I don't know anything about tennis, as you can probably tell. He didn't say a single thing about the game of tennis. What he talked about is what's the nature of mind needed to master tennis. And for the last nearly 20 years, that has been the way that I have related to agility, which is this question. What is the nature of mind and consciousness needed to create conditions for a deep and sustained organizational agility? So I've been in this game for a long time. And what I learned early on, was it is an inner game, like Michael was talking about yesterday morning. There's no other way. And unfortunately, it requires us to have conversations that are hard. And demanding. And so yes, in this next hour I'll be somewhat demanding. And I know that you'll welcome that. So this is a big topic, and I'm going to take a very thin slice. So I do workshops and I do programs, 9 months, 10 months, 12-month programs, and it takes that much time to really be able to get this, where we're going to take a thin slice through innovation. So I want to define what I mean by innovation. Having a rather recalcitrant clicker here. Yeah, I think we'll need to replace. Does someone have another clicker I can use? Oh, no, because my laptop is right here. Oh, here we go. Okay, good. Don't worry. It's all going to be okay. It looks a little dicey at the moment, but it's going to be okay, I promise. So I define innovation as any thought or action which brings about a new possibility in another's world. So iPhone, when it first came out in 2007, was an innovation. It generated or made possible or created a new possibility in another's world. Similarly, Scrum is an innovation. It makes possible, it makes a new possibility in another's world. Any kind of conversation which serves to elevate the consciousness of another person is an innovation, I would say. So I want to just establish what we mean by innovation, that innovation is really what we're up to when that which we do contributes to the evolution of consciousness and culture. And ultimately, in my view, that's what agility is about. So the tiny sliver is going to be through innovation. So to bring about innovation, we need to be innovative. Now that seems like a pretty obvious statement, doesn't it? But here's the problem with that. We throw around the word be like we know what the hell we're talking about. But we really don't. What do we know, or what do we think, or how do we understand what it is to be? And I would suggest that for the most part, we don't know. We don't really pay attention. And so this talk is in large part about being. And by the way, in large part, it is a tiny echo of what we just heard from Swamiji. So it's just a different take and a tiny little echo. So what are the conditions for innovation as we're defining it here? So we've been talking in this workshop about VUCA, which is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And the two things I want to point specifically to just for a moment, complexity, the essence of complexity is that there is not a there's not a linear relationship between cause and effect. Right? Now, it sounds reasonable. We don't live that. For the most part, we live as though there is a linear relationship between cause and effect. We'll come back to that in a moment. All right? And the other thing I wanted to call out is ambiguity. That ambiguity means that the customer seems to be saying this, but they might be saying that. And so oftentimes it's not necessarily that we don't understand what the customer is saying. Sometimes it's what we understand that gets us into trouble. It's thinking that we understand somebody that gets us into trouble. And that's the nature of ambiguity. So VUCA, I would suggest, is the necessary condition for innovation. You can't have innovation without some sort of disruption. By the way, I'm making statements that I'm saying them as though they're true. Don't believe anything that I'm saying here. Just consider it. Will you do that? Don't believe it. Just consider it. So the problem with VUCA, here's the problem with VUCA. We don't like it. How many people like the fact that we live in a VUCA world? Most of us kind of like, we get excited by it, but for the most part, we don't like it. What happens when we face VUCA is we get confused. We start to confront our own insecurities. Like right now, standing here, I'm facing kind of like the unknown. I'm not even quite sure what's going to come out of my mouth next. And that's the nature of VUCA, which is that we experience insecurity, we experience confusion, we experience anxiety. And what do we do when we experience those things? What do we do? Panic, react, withdraw, did you say? God, that's cool. That's great. That's a good one. What else? We accept. Some of us do. You do. I can tell by your look that you do. Yeah? So, for the most part, what most of us try to do most of the time is we try to exert control. We try to get controls in place. Don't we? Something's a little out of control, and we try to put controls in place. And in other words, what we try to do is we try to create the illusion of predict and plan. That the predict and plan, the nature of predict and plan is that I can predict the future, and on the basis of that prediction, make a plan. How many people plan your vacations? How many people plan when you're going to go out for a special date night with your spouse? Yeah? And what happens when those plans get disrupted? Huh? Sadness. What? Sadness. Frustration, anger. Huh? Yeah. Fights. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. And huh? Okay, you stop planning. Oh, good. So you let her plan it. So that's your predict and plan method. By the way, we all have our ways of coping with VUCA. Each one of it's part of our personality, isn't it? Each of us, our personality is constituted by an avoidance of dealing with VUCA. Remember, I'm not saying believe it, just consider it. So we live in this illusion of predict and plan, and I assert that it's not us doing it. It's kind of like an operating system. Swamiji alluded to this when he talked about there's the stuff on the screen and then there's the software behind this. And this is kind of like that, right? So when I use my iPhone, for the most part, I don't pay attention to the operating system. I'm too busy, like texting and reading things on LinkedIn and sending love letters to my wife. I don't pay attention to the underlying operating system until it puts up that pesky message saying you need to upgrade your operating system. And I'd say no. And I say no. And after weeks of saying no, I get punished because suddenly one of my apps kind of starts behaving strangely. And then another app starts behaving strangely. And if I didn't upgrade my operating system for 3 years, what would happen to all those apps? Would any of them run? No. I would suggest the same is true for us. That until we upgrade our own inner operating system, at some point those apps in us, which is our actions, behaviors, decisions, our competencies, our skills, all the things that we do, especially in a VUCA world, remember we're talking about a VUCA world, all those apps one by one stop working as well as they used to. So at some point we need to upgrade that inner operating system in all of us if we're going to be able to function in a VUCA world. And I would suggest that for the most part the operating system on which we run, or the operating system that runs us, is a predict and plan operating system. And we need to upgrade it. So all of these challenges and problems that we have with Agile, that we try to fix through adding another structure, another process. Oh, maybe we need to scale. That's what we need. We need a really well-defined scaling framework. By the way, I'm not dissing SAFe or any other scaling frame. All I'm saying, I'm pointing to, it's just simply another mode of predict and plan, trying to put controls in place. We think if we put another process in place, that's going to help us get better at Agile. How is that going? It's not going well, let me tell you. I can't tell you, like in the early years when I used to go into organizations, and basically what they wanted me to do was to fix Agile. They didn't say it in so many words, but for the most part, for consultants, what they're wanting us to do is to fix their Agile. They've already installed the Agile, as Michael talked about yesterday. Now they want us to come in and fix it, because it's been installed, right? And it's not operating correctly. The apps are kind of breaking down all over the place. And the bad news that I always have to deliver is that in order to fix the Agile, you're going to have to upgrade your own inner operating system. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. That's too hard. Or that doesn't make any sense. Or that's unreasonable. Or that's too woo-woo. Now, I am in India, so I don't hear that kind of stuff here very much. But maybe you do. The nature of the operating system we need to upgrade ourselves to is what we call a sense and respond operating system. And sense and respond is quite simple. I sense what's going on. And incidentally, just to remind us, or myself, this talk is a small little echo of things that Swamiji was saying. It's amazing, actually. I was like, Swamiji, how did you know what I was going to talk about? And I'm almost embarrassed to come and bring up some of these issues with you again, right? So I do so with great humility. Sense and respond. We sense what's going on around us and respond. Sense and respond. And it's a tight feedback loop. So for the most part, we don't operate on a sense and respond operating system. It's really hard. I actually have dedicated great patience and practice to the art of developing my own inner sense and respond operating system, and I'd say still 90% of the time I revert back to predict and plan. But I'm very hopeful, because it used to be like 92%. So each year I knock off 1%. And in another 60 years, if I'm still around, which I probably won't be, I'll get it. But it's a game worth playing. I'd like to suggest, and good news for all of us, there's a whole human technology out there to help us. So what I want to do is I want to give you just a little hint of the nature of that technology, that human technology. And I'm going to do it in a kind of a metaphorical way. I'm going to keep with this kind of operating system metaphor. By the way, I forgot to design with the person who does the timing signs. Who is that? Is there someone who does that? Yes. So will you let me know when I have 30 minutes left, 15? Yeah? Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right. So let's just kind of take this apart. So this is a sort of an anatomy of a sense and respond operating system. By the way, I'm not necessarily suggesting that the human mind is an operating system. I'm just simply speaking metaphorically to help us be able to talk about it in a way that's not too esoteric. So you have the application layer, right? And if what we're trying to do is create an environment of organizational agility, we have these kinds of apps that we run. We have delivery agility and operational agility, which is, delivery agility is things like Scrum and SAFe and all that kind of stuff, the kind of thing that we talk about usually when we talk about agility, although that's changing in recent years. We also have operational agility, so when we talk about things like DevOps. By the way, when I first started in the Agile world, there was no such thing as DevOps. Operational agility was like a dark horse. We didn't know what the heck to do with that. And then more recently, we have these other things coming onto the horizon. Customer agility, which is like Steve Blank. I don't know if people have ever heard of him, or Lean Startup. So there's a whole movement that's been going on for almost as long as Agile around how do we have agility in delivering value to the customer who, for the most part, doesn't know what they want. By the way, I don't say that as a criticism of the customer. It's just how we are. We live in a world where anything is possible. And innovation is about bringing a new possibility to another. All right, so marketing, HR, budgeting, all this stuff. So these are all Agile apps. And all of that is the application layer. And fundamental to this application layer are the behaviors that we exhibit. So there are certain behaviors we see when we see these kinds of agility happening. There's certain behaviors that we see, human behaviors. Behaviors are, when I talk about behaviors here, I mean human behaviors, not like our dog or our goldfish or something, but human behaviors, and then structures. The structures that get built and created by human beings. All of this together becomes the what we do. And I put all that together and I refer to it as outer agility. And for the most part, when we're talking about agility, we're talking about outer agility. For the most part. And when things don't go well in outer agility, we just try to do it, quote, better, right? Don't we? We add another, I know what we need to do. Retrospectives aren't going so well. We need to spice up the retrospectives. Make them more interesting, more entertaining. All these kinds of things comes from a predict and plan mindset. And to the degree that we're focused on outer agility, that's pretty much all we have. Because remember, if we're going to embrace the possibility of organizational agility as an innovation, we need to upgrade our own operating system, and that points to the next layer down, which is the operating system layer. And at the operating system layer, at the top level are the skills and competencies. They're kind of like the operating system services. And it's like the services of the mind, right? There are certain things that we're able to do, certain competencies that we have, certain skills, certain abilities that we have. And in order to have agility, there are certain things that we need to be able to do. And so this is a layer that I would call what we can do. So there's what we do and what we can do, right? And if we find that we're not able to get the results in the domain of what we do, what do? Don't we try to improve this? We send people to training, we get coaches and mentors and all that kind of stuff, right? Now, how many people have noticed that sometimes people get trained in certain things to help them be more agile, and then they don't do those things. They actually don't practice what they've learned. How many people have ever noticed that? Doesn't that piss you off? Or maybe not piss you off, but it's kind of like, it's disappointing. Isn't it disappointing? Especially when you have mentoring relationships with people, you've been mentoring them, and then when they're in the heat of battle, they revert to some old behavior, some unhelpful behavior, and the reason that is because there's something going on underneath, which I'm calling the hidden layer. And at the hidden layer, there are 4 things that are happening. And I'll walk through each of these briefly. The hidden layer is hidden because, for the most part, we're unaware of it. It's that kernel operating system operating in the background, of which we are, for the most part, notice I say for the most part, because we have glimmers we're able to see every once in a while. Beliefs, assumptions, theories, and triggers in us that determine how we think, how we act, how we behave, how we respond in any given moment. So, for instance, beliefs. So, I may espouse the belief that I believe that the people who I manage and lead are intelligent and resourceful. I believe that. That's my belief, right? That's the belief I hold. Then there's the belief that holds me, which is secretly, when push comes to shove, when the stake, follow this, check this out for yourself, when push comes to shove, when the stakes get high, I don't believe that. I kind of don't believe that they can do it. When the stakes are high, and when it looks like failure could happen, I kind of don't believe it. And we all have beliefs, so that's just one example of thousands. We all have beliefs operating in the background that determine how we think and behave in any given moment. Similarly for assumptions, an assumption is something like, I assume that if I tell you to do something, that you understand what I'm asking you to do. I just assume that. And then when you don't do what I asked you to do, then I do something else. I have a different assumption, right? So assumptions we get like 10 a minute operating. When we're interacting with people, there's all kinds of assumptions. How many people can relate to this, right? And for the most part, we're unaware of the assumptions that are behind the scenes, that are down in that hidden layer. So we have theories. I have a theory as to why my wife behaves the way that she does. And we walk around, we're like a book this thick of theories. But we're unaware of it. It's like we have this gigantic backpack on us, you know. It's like, we're walking around, and we got this theory, we got this baggage of theories, beliefs, assumptions. And it's like, what chair? I don't see a chair. What the heck are you talking about? And it defines how we are in the world. Not bad, by the way. This is not like a problem. We're just trying to recognize the nature of this thing. Triggers. By the way, one of the most powerful theories is the theory of linear causality. She made me mad. Right? The traffic made me late. That should be a good one here in Mumbai. Having experienced the traffic and being thoroughly entertained, Michael and I have just been like, we like to sit in the front seat when we get an Uber, so we can be entertained. It's so entertaining, right? So the idea that there is a linear causality between one thing and another, but it's not necessarily true. It's simply a product of an entire metaphysical attitude into which we got born. We didn't get to choose We didn't get to choose the party into which we got born. And in this case, the party is, there's a theory that there's linear causality, that she made me do it. All right. So all of this points to how we make sense, or to put it more provocatively, how sense makes us, because for the most part we're unaware of this. Now, here's the thing. To the degree we are unaware of the sense that's making us, we have no choice, or very little choice. We have to the degree that this sense, all of these assumptions and theories and beliefs and triggers, emotional triggers, to the degree that all of that is happening and we're unaware of it, it runs us, and we have no choice. We have no just one of those big words, existential choice. That is, we have no choice as to how to be in the world. So, there's a human technology that we're just literally going to barely scratch the surface on here, which brings together an enormous number of traditions, probably one of the most predominant of which is the tradition of the Indian wisdom tradition, the study of the mind. And the yogis and the masters in the tradition, in the Indian traditions, they studied the mind not from the outside, but from the inside, from experience. From the experience of the mind. And one of the things that they teach us and have taught us is how to become more deliberate. So I'm using the language I'm introducing here. How to become more deliberate in our inner sense-making in order to create more choice. So another way of saying that is how to gain control of our mind so that we're able to choicefully use our mind to create what it is that we're committed to. How many are with me? So, I want to just briefly introduce, so a couple of other points to make here. So how sense makes us determines what we can do. And what we can do determines what we do. And in this case, there is a kind of a linear causality. And by the same token, we say that inner agility is the source of outer agility. That to the degree that we develop our inner agility, that we become capable of creating outer agility. So I want to give you an example of what this might look like. So here's a behavior, all right? This is in the domain of what we do. Here's a behavior. We collaborate well in order to leverage and combine our unique strengths. Right? That's something that we ask Agile team members to be able to do. By the way, this is really something that we might want to ask pretty much everybody to do, but certainly in Agile teams. And the competencies and skills include these. We can communicate skillfully. Incidentally, it's been my experience that for the most part, we suck at communication. Maybe it's different here. I don't know. I haven't seen enough here in India, but every place I go, we're not very good at communication, right? And so skillful communication is actually a skill that needs to be developed. It's not something that we wake up with. We can give and receive useful feedback. That's another area where we're not so good at. You know, we might want to give someone feedback, but we feel uncomfortable because we don't want them to feel bad. Or when we do give people feedback, oftentimes it's more a reflection of my preference for them than it is what might be useful for them. So we're not skillful for the most part in giving and receiving feedback. And then can manage conflict. Conflict is a necessary condition in any human relationship. It is a signal of a need for greater diversity and differentiation. It's a natural quality of any relationship, and for the most part, we try to avoid conflict. And we stuff it, and it creates all kinds of problems. So these are all competencies and skills, but can you see that we're not very good at this? And we can go to communication workshops, we can go to feedback workshops, all of that stuff, but we're not necessarily going to get very good at it until something else starts to come online, and that something else is in this hidden layer, which is the sense-making layer. And these are some of the qualities, these are some of the inner qualities, the inner operating system qualities that need to come online in order to be able to do these things. To come to the place where we can do these things in order to do this, we have to develop these capabilities within ourselves. So, remember at the beginning that I'm just offering a sliver for us of this, okay? Feel free to take a photo if you want. I'll get out of the way. This is kind of a key slide, I guess. Okay. I'll just give you a second to kind of let that soak in. I don't have enough time to really get into any of this stuff, really. But just to kind of like tease you with this. Still seeing cameras out. All right, so I want to tell you, but I'm going to have to do so declaratively. So there is a meta practice that I call deliberate sense making, or that we call deliberate sense making. And by meta practice, I mean it's a set of practices that are designed to help us become more deliberate in our sense-making. By that I mean they help us become more aware. Remember Swamiji was talking about awareness. Help us become more aware of the sense-making that's making us, in order to make it possible for us to become more choiceful in the sense-making that's determining how we think. Does that make sense? How many people see this for yourself? Like you can see this possibility. Like what might it be like if I could sort of like unzip the head and look inside the brain that's producing all that stuff? Wouldn't that be cool? So that's a possibility, that's an innovation, right? It's a possibility. So there's one specific practice that I want to just point to very briefly and then just tell you a brief story. There's one of these practices that help us unzip our brains for ourselves and for others, by the way. It's not just for ourselves, but for others. This is a practice that we do with others. It's called a deliberately developmental conversation. And the purpose of the deliberately developmental conversation is, first of all, that it helps us reveal those inner beliefs, assumptions, theories, and triggers so that we can become more choiceful. And, well, that's actually the second part. In order to help us equip ourselves to be able to transcend the hold which those have over us. And by hold, I mean that the amount that they determine our thinking. So the whole point of deliberately you try to say that fast. You think it's easy being up here trying to say deliberately developmental conversation. It is not. And I keep wanting to find a better phrase for this. If anyone comes up with it, we'll include that with the hashtag contest, right? Somebody will get a rich reward if you come up with something that I think is good. A little test for you. So you get the idea here. So it's a very, I wouldn't say a formulaic conversation, but it's a conversation that has a certain constitution, a certain structure, a certain kind of practice to it. It's not just any old conversation. And we don't have time to go into what that is. Not here anyways. So I want to tell you a story. some years ago, I worked with this organization, and I was working with their senior leadership team, and they were leading a very large Agile transformation. And so I started, this was in the early days, this is way before I called it deliberately developmental conversation, right? Way before that, it was like in the early days when I was kind of thinking about this stuff, and I started engaging them in it's sort of a kind of coaching conversation, but what emerged from that was that it was a conversation. I was with the whole leadership team, there were 7 of them, and but what happened over the course of these conversations is that the team members started to become more aware of their inner assumptions, their shared assumptions, the beliefs that they held, what was triggering them, all that kind of stuff. And it became possible for them to to have certain insights that were key for them. And there were 3 insights that they had. The first one was they gained increased capacity. They saw that increased capacity doesn't necessarily equal increased flow. That sounds sacrilegious to me. And to many in the room, that sounds rather suspect. And maybe it should be, I don't know. but that was an insight. So, and in a moment I'll show you what happened as a result of these insights. The other insight, or another insight they had, was that Agile is not necessarily only for software teams. This was about 10 years ago, way before business agility started on the scene, right? So, not just for software teams. It could be for everybody in the whole organization. And finally, organizational change happens when everyone can own it. So, for seasoned leaders, senior director, VP, EVP, at that level, these were rather shocking insights because they were working in a large financial services company. So these are the experiments that they engaged in that came out. So this is the inner agility, right? Now I'm about to show you the results, what happened, right? So it informed an approach to organizational transformation because remember, they were engaged in catalyzing or leading a large-scale Agile transformation. And so they came up with this idea that they had 10 delivery teams, and they decided to bring it down to 7 to reduce the capacity in order to stress the system. Not to punish anybody, but what it forced them to do, it forced the whole organization along the value stream to become more innovative. They actually had to start making decisions what projects or what products are of the highest business value. And it forced them to have what ended up being rather uncomfortable conversations. How am I doing on time? Well, how much time do I have left? Sorry? Okay, good, thank you. Notice, by the way, that question that I asked. I said, how are we doing on time? And she responded to my question with a thumbs up. Right? I was not clear in my question. We do that a couple of times a minute. And then we wonder why, and then we get irritated with other people. Consider that when communication goes bad, it's your responsibility, not theirs. Consider. Didn't ask you to believe it, just consider it as a possibility. All right? So, 10 teams down to 7. So I'll show you the results in a minute. Actually, I'll just say something about this. After about a year, what they found is that their throughput increased because it forced them to innovate. It forced them to give up bad habits that the 10 teams covered up. It increased throughput. Now, reduce capacity, increase throughput doesn't make sense. It's paradoxical. But that's the nature of sense and respond thinking oftentimes, is that it's necessarily paradoxical. What paradoxical really means is that it disagrees with the predict and plan thinking that we've all been inculcated into. So when something is paradoxical, what it may be pointing to it may be pointing to that the categories that we have for holding something are the wrong categories. All right, so the other thing that they did is that they brought Agile practices to all their operations teams. So all the operation teams worked in small pods. So they completely redid the floor. Everyone used to be in cubicles, tall cubicles, so they could work by themselves and not be annoyed by their neighbors, right? And they opened up the cubicles so that people started working in pods. At first, people rebelled, but then after a year, they came to the conclusion that this was the best thing that ever happened. And finally, they created a kind of organization-wide structure of Kaizen pods, which is basically pods that were completely self-organizing. And what would happen is that one person would identify some issue, organizational issue, and they would enroll maybe 4 or 5 other people to work together to engage in a practice that would help them discover what's the underlying conditions that create that issue. And it created an enormous, this was the most powerful of all of these, it created enormous organizational awareness. Throughout the whole organization, people were much more aware, not just of the nature of the dysfunctions in their organization, but they actually became masterful at systems thinking in a very applied way. So the results after 18 months of all of this, 100% increase in speed to market. 150% increase in new ideas fielded. This was an innovation, it became an innovation factory. 100% increase in associate happiness, which was the most important thing. Okay, so what happened, so this is kind of like summarize this whole piece. What happened is that an outer transformation was sparked by an inner transformation. The inner transformation that started with the leadership team when they deliberately exposed the hidden beliefs, assumptions, theories, and triggers that were there in order to come up with a new insight which made possible an entirely different way of leading an organizational transformation, but also the inner transformation in the people within the organization, many of whom were profoundly transformed by this whole new way of doing things. I'm going to come to questions in just a second. So actually, I'm going to leave these questions with you, just to kind of, I'm going to leave this slide up as we come to some questions. Actually, take a photo. Does anyone know whether or not I'm still doing a book signing? It's in the program? Okay, good. All right, so then I don't have to put the book up on the screen. Okay, great. So, all right, now I would like to have a conversation to discuss some of these things. We have 15 minutes. And so do we have microphones? Well, okay. Notice again what a stupid question that was. Of course we have microphones in the room. I mean, hello? The question is, do we have a means by which we can deploy the microphones to the people who might want to speak? Okay, good.
So
can you see how what we're up against?
We'll take questions from one corner each. So we'll start from this corner.
And actually, so Michael, I had a question around in one of the slides.
Yeah,
I think probably the previous slide.
Yeah.
You mentioned that the outcome was, and one of the outcome was, I think, the increase in associate 100% increase in associate happiness.
Yes.
Correct. So I'm a little curious to know what was the unit.
Hold on. So there's like a disturbance in the room. You notice that? I personally don't like for us to talk over, like if there's something brewing, hold whatever is brewing, and we'll bring it into the whole room. All right? Good. Thank you. Please.
Yeah, so I was a little curious to know what was the unit of measurement of 100% increase in associate happiness? So how did you measure the happiness? That's the question. You, or for that matter, in this story or case study, whatever
Yes,
it is.
yes, right. So how, well, so this is one of those measures. It's not a, what's the word? What's the word I'm looking for, Michael? You don't know. Huh? Okay, that's a good guess, but wrong. So there's certain things that are really hard to measure in concrete ways, right? But how we found out about this was that through a series of conversations. So when I work in organizations, I'm constantly having one-on-one conversations with people, as was, by the way, the EVP of this organization. He would constantly be having conversations with people, and what we found over the course of that 18 months is that people now truly loved coming to work. And that was not the case when this started. It was not the case, right? So that may or may not be helpful. Is that helpful? Yeah. Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah. That's right. Well, the thing is when you have a measure like this, you want to be careful. I was about to use a swear word. You want to be careful to not delude yourself. That's the main thing. Right? It's very easy to delude yourself on measures like this, which I think may be what you were pointing to. Yeah, good. All right, let's see, over here. And then we'll
I have it. I have.
Please.
Yeah, just to share that, okay, we are in a transformation journey. I'm giving the background before I ask the question. Okay, so we are in a transformation journey, and we are doing agile and the mindset transformation. So in this, do you suggest to have and just to add another information, we have around 50 teams. We have around 50 teams.
Mm-hmm.
So do you suggest to have consistent measurement across all the team, or will the metrics for measurement should vary from team to team?
I would say to that, you guys ready? This is going to be a moment of provocation. I would say yes.
So the metrics should be consistent across.
No, to both.
Okay. Okay. So they should
So
not.
you kind of have to experiment,
Okay.
right? And in experimenting, to be clear what it is that you're looking for. Now, in the spirit of what we're talking about here, I would want us to have a conversation, what I've been calling a deliberately developmental conversation, to find out the nature of the assumptions and beliefs that determine that question. Because I can't take a question like that at face value. Every question like that, every question is always a reflection of a deeper metaphysics. And the metaphysics drive the question. And so I want to uncover the metaphysics, what's the underlying thinking, in case there's something wrong in that thinking. But most of the time we don't do that because we don't have time or because blah, 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 right? And I'm insisting that's what we need to start doing. Whenever we have a question like this, we have to start to engage in a conversation. What are the assumptions and beliefs which determine the character of that question? Not a bad question, and it might be the right question, but we don't know until we interrogate it. Right? Is that?
Yeah, it answers.
Sorry, didn't
Anybody
answer the
from
question,
that?
but okay. And then we have someone here with a microphone as well. Okay. Yeah, please. Yeah. Good.
Hi, I am Ekta. Okay.
We're good. We have 10
Okay.
more minutes.
Oh, we have.
I don't know
lots
how
of
that
time.
5 minutes just felt like it was 20
I'll take
minutes.
only 1 minute.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
Same thing happened to Swamiji. He gained 5 minutes. It's like 5 minutes is running around on the loose. I got it now. All right.
Okay. I have a question like when we are going for transformation anywhere. When we are going for transformation, and I want to understand your experience. Do you get indications when you say that as a coach we are now should withdraw from this transformation, and as the organization is right now not ready or is not worth giving that much energy to it?
Are you asking that as a question of me?
Yes, I want to understand your experience when we as a agile coach should actually withdraw sometime.
So can I be provocative with you? You look like somebody I could be provocative with. Is that all right?
I'm like,
It depends on what happens, right?
yes,
Okay,
exactly.
I promise to take care of you. Will you do this? Yeah?
No, I'm not.
So, why are you asking that question? Because you already know.
Oh, no, I am trying to understand if that is the right moment for us to give up or we should keep on putting that energy further.
So, I'm going to push you on that. Because
Okay.
you already know. See, it doesn't matter whether it's right in the abstract, does it? Does that really matter to you?
Okay, why I'm asking this question from yesterday's session on blindfold phenomena. There was a curve he has shown. In this, after you are actually seeing that this energy is not going anywhere, you are starting to thinking, okay, let's not put much energy on it. So I just
Right.
want to understand if that is, I mean, that curve or actually this happens with the organization when we should actually take
So
a
let
call
me ask you this,
not to go
let me
ahead.
ask you a question. Are you in that curve? Where are you in that curve?
I don't know right now.
Yeah, you
I am
do.
actually
Yeah, you
trying to
do.
introspect.
Yeah, you do.
I do.
Yeah, you do.
These
See,
three
I
are
told you I
from
was
my
going to
same
provoke you.
company and they are.
I told you I was going to provoke you, right? See, I would suggest that you do, and you just need to talk to your friends to get your head straight on it.
Okay.
Because are these your
Maybe
friends?
three from the
Yeah,
same.
yeah, yeah. She knows, doesn't she? Yeah,
I am asking from
Yeah.
all of
yeah. I have fired probably 3 times as many clients as have fired me.
Okay, so that can be a.
And I've been fired.
Yes. I'll do that now.
Wait, so this gentleman here has had the microphone for quite a while, and so we'll come to him, and then we'll come to you. All right? Good, awesome, please.
Thank you, sir. It's an informative session you shared with us, and it's a learning for us. One question I have is that the WIP limit, the work in progress, the capacity, what you said, it's decreased, and then you have throughput higher.
You're asking something about whip limit?
Yeah.
Yep.
No, you said the capacity has been reduced, the first part, and the previous slides, right?
Oh, right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the question related to is that the capacity is what you're relating is the WIP limit, right? Correct?
No, it's
Okay,
not.
fine.
It's not the same thing.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
if the capacity is reduced and you got the more throughput, how does the organization look at it in terms of you guys are not utilizing more potential of the resources, meaning you reduce the capacity of their work ethic, means work timings, and but you are getting the more, it means they would be basically in terms of real on the practical, on the ground level, they would like to see us more throughput, more kind of a value driven to us with the existing resources and what we have. But the management doesn't understand key.
Yeah. I get the gist of the question. Sorry to interrupt. So this was just the first 18 months. There was another subsequent 12 months. But what I can say to that is organizational learning is at least as important. In fact, I would say more important since it precedes organizational performance. And so at first, especially people in the product management side, they say, wait a minute, you're reducing you're making the pipe that was once this big. After a year, they recognized that it forced them to become disciplined because you know what? For an undisciplined product management mind, the pipe is never big enough. Never big enough. And so by forcing us into a smaller pipe, it created an occasion for organizational innovation. That is to say, organizational learning, and to make it even more kind of like pragmatic, it helped the product managers realize that the nature of the discipline it takes to deliver value to customers when you have like millions of customers and you have thousands of potential places you could go. Is that at all reasonably responsive to your question? Notice I said reasonably. So with you, because we and I have talked a couple of times, I would let that percolate. Because there's something that's kind of like something in your mind that's not quite letting that in. No, I understand. Yes, right. So whenever I hear somebody say, and just with all due respect, whenever I hear somebody say practical, I'm going to start to want to ask the question, what is it that determines practical? And let's take a look at that. But is it okay if I just leave this? Yeah, good. All right. Do we have time for one more question? Just one more. Okay, great. So you've got the floor. Make it good.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would be able to make it in 1 minute, but thank you. It was very good talk.
By the way, I'm just teasing you because you and I have also talked as well.
Okay, so really this case study and the results that it showed, I would call it like the agile promise fulfilled, and the framework that you explained puts it very well. I'll directly come to my question is, you explained about this deliberate discussions, right? What was it, DDC?
Yes, deliberately developmental conversation.
Okay, deliberately development conversation, right?
See, you can't say it, can you?
It's a tongue twister. So
DDC, yeah, good. Michael reminded, we actually called it DDC in our
I won
workshop.
that competition. Actually, it came from behind. Someone said that.
Okay.
So, Michael, I'm sure others can also relate, right? When we work in our organizations and we are dealing with senior executives especially, right? And they come with a very different mindset sometimes. And it is sometimes a little difficult to break in, right? I'm not sure how is it with you, but for us, that conversation is very challenging. And they say, okay, yeah, I know everything about Agile. Don't tell me about this thing and show me the result, right? And we know where does it end. And if you talk about these kind of conversations, and it can help in getting through and trying to bring in some change there. It's very difficult to change those beliefs, assumptions, theories, and what you mentioned, triggers, right? Because it's kind of bringing in a transformation in another person. But is it like this DDC? Is it something like some sort of Socratic conversation or something like what Soren Kierkegaard proposed? Is it something like that you basically through this dialogue you make the other person realize these things, and has it worked out that way with you?
Okay, so it has, so the question has, the main question here is this kind of like a Socratic dialogue? I would say it's kind of like a Socratic dialogue in the sense that it's designed to uncover hidden assumptions, right? But it's not necessarily carried out necessarily as a Socratic dialogue. It's more like a Socratic conversation that we have with each other. So that's about all I can say right
But
now.
then with
good.
Socrates, they gave him hemlock to drink.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for the wonderful insights. I request Goel Sirji to please present a token of appreciation to Michael. Goel Sirji.